But do you know that the Reformation almost didn't survive? And nobody really teaches. I was talking to somebody the other day, I said, this isn't taught. Pastors don't teach this real well, and I don't do this real well either. And I don't know what you were taught when you were a kid. What were you taught about the Reformation? Kind of the basics, right? Okay, Martin Luther, 95 Theses, things like this, right? Mm-hmm. What were you taught occurred after the 95 Theses? What did you learn about the Reformation after he posted the 95 Theses? What occurred the next year, for example, in 1518? Did anybody, I'm just asking this, okay, because I'm curious. I get some blank looks. But I don't think people were taught the Heidelberg Theses of 50. Were you taught this when you grew up? No. I wonder why weren't people taught this? You know, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, well, most pastors don't want to rock the boat, right? They want to keep it simple. And they don't want to, really teach the wholeness of it, Or maybe they didn't learn about it. I don't know. Maybe, that's another thing, too. You've got to wonder, was your pastor taught these things, right? What do you know what your pastor was really taught, Did you look at my GPA when you called me here at this church?
It's 4.0.
Did you look at the courses I took? Yeah. Anyway, you think about that, the Leipzig debate, 1519, very formative. But I came across something the other day, and I always knew about this too, but I've never been able to get my hands on it until now. And I finally ordered it. It's finally in English, okay? And you're going to have a deer in the headlights look at this too. The year 1550, okay? In year 1550, now when did Luther die? Luther lived from 1483 to 1546, okay? Always remember that. 1546 is a really, really critical year because that's the day Martin Luther died. Now, here's another thing too. Were you ever taught what happened after Luther died to the Lutheran Church?
No.
No. I wonder about that. Well, basically, here's what happened. It disintegrated.
Yeah.
It went to pot, okay? And in 1550, so Emperor Charles V, Chucky was always on this thing, okay? So Chucky's on this thing, and he imposes this Augsburg Interim, right, in 1548. Now, were you ever taught the Augsburg Interim? No, that's another one, too. What was the Augsburg Interim? Well, it's kind of like we're going to go along and get along, because you got to remember you had the 30 Years' War occurring, right? And what was this war all about? It was the Roman Catholics and the Protestants, going like this, right? How many people died in that war? Okay. So Charles enacts this Augsburg Interim, which basically said what? What did the Augsburg Interim teach? You Lutherans can do your thing, because you got to understand, Lutheranism had a lot of political protection, okay? Donald Trump was protecting the Lutherans in Eastern Germany, okay? And Joseph Biden was on the other side as a Roman Catholic protecting the Catholic princes. So another thing, this is hard for us to understand, but maybe the day is coming where you had really no separation or distinction of church and state, right? Okay? And so the Augsburg Interim was put into place. The Augsburg Interim said, you Lutherans, you can continue to be Lutheran, okay? Which meant what for Lutherans? Your priests could get married. They allowed them that, okay? They allowed them communion in both kinds, okay? Both kinds was a huge thing because you could only take communion of one kind according to the doctrine and practice of the Western Catholic Church. And that was actually codified. It's still codified to this day, even in the Roman Church as well. So that was a big thing. Now, what did the Lutherans, what was the concession on this? What did they have to accept? They had to accept transubstantiation, okay? They had to accept the authority of the Pope, and other things like this too. And these Lutherans said, well, wait a second. No, we're not going to compromise on some things and accept some things just because you want to do this. But it was a way of kind of keeping the peace, as it were. Well, what happened in the city of Magdeburg, Germany. Does everybody know where Magdeburg is located? If you look at the map, okay? This is interesting. I'm going to write this down. Be very quick, okay? Magdeburg was a city kind of like southwest of Berlin there. And this city would not accept the Augsburg Interim and the concessions. And so they drafted what was called the Magdeburg Confession. Okay? Now, how many of you have heard of the Magdeburg Confession? The answer is none of you have heard about it. That's the answer. If you ask most Lutheran pastors, they go, what? No. Magdeburg Confession. This is available finally for the first time in English, which is why I'm getting it. It was never available in English before. I looked on the internet, scoured this. This confession was written by 9 Lutheran pastors, for lack of a better term, in the city of Magdeburg, Germany. And they said, no, we're not going to concede to the Augsburg Interim. We're not going to capitulate. We're not going to compromise on these articles of doctrine. We want to hold to the whole Augsburg Confession. Of course, the Augsburg Confession was published in 1530, okay? But you still hadn't come. Now think about this. You got 30 years till the Book of Concord's put out, right? 1580. And then you had the Formula of Concord in 1577, which was, you know, it's kind of interesting. You think about unity, right? Because we're all after unity right now, aren't we? Okay? Because you know that Donald Trump and Joseph Biden are polarizing the country. They're causing division and unrest, right? Okay? And you know that Pastor Jordan and Pastor Smith are causing division in the church because all they talk about is the differences in the church, okay? Right? And so I tell people, well, actually not true. Actually, people were divided already, and the times bring these things out, correct? Okay. So what's interesting here, too, Germany was struggling with this, and the Western Catholic Church was struggling with it, the Lutherans were struggling with it. How do we have unity? How do we have concordia? Because what does the word concordia mean? It means with one heart, right? It means literally concardia, means with one heart, one belief. So this book is called the Book of Concordia, or literally, of concord, of coming together in unity. And so you think about this is nothing new, is it? This desire for unity and harmony in the church. How many of you have lived through conflicts in the church? Okay? Everybody has, and you're going to continue to live through conflict in the church. The church is always going to have conflict, okay? We sang about it in the opening hymn on Sunday, okay? I don't know if you saw, KRCR TV 7 did a nice little report on the service, and it was very beautiful to hear the singing, to hear some interviews. I didn't watch all of it, but I understand some of you were interviewed. Was anybody here interviewed? Okay. Anyway, but you think about that hymn, the church is one foundation, and it talks about heresies rent asunder, and Lord save us by your grace, and we're going to go through all these things. How does the church achieve unity? How does the church have conquered? So these 9 Lutheran pastors published the Magdeburg Confession. When I get the book, I'll give it to you and share it with you. You can order it. It's on Amazon, of course. And I want to find out what they did. Well, they took a stand. They dug in their heels. And guess what they did? They locked down the city, and there was a military war on. And they besieged the city of Magdeburg. And this went on for like almost a year. And finally, the forces gave up. They couldn't penetrate the city. And as a result of this, Lutheranism survived. Isn't it amazing? Because of 9 Lutheran pastors. I don't even know their names. Right? I'll find out. This is going to be interesting. This is fascinating because we hold up Luther like he was the big hero, correct? I always remember at Halloween at seminary, they put a big cape on Martin Luther on the statue, put a big L on it. He was Super L, he's Superman, right? They put a pumpkin in one hand, on Reformation Day. It was kind of a joke, okay? We had other funny little things too. We had Our Lady of the Quad. There was one professor that always railed against the Roman Catholic Church and their doctrine of Mariolatry and things like that. So these students, we always loved to do this. We put a trash can upside down and put a statue of Mother Mary on the trash can and called her Our Lady of the Quad in honor of Professor Schmelder. So these little jokes and things that go on like this too. Did you guys ever do any of this stuff in college and seminary? Pranks? No? What'd you do? Did you have fun with things? But anyway, this Magdeburg Confession 1550 is very interesting. You can read about it, the story about that. And I think we should learn about those kind of events because we have this romantic view of Lutheranism, right? That Luther went up there with a hammer and pounded these babies in there and 95 theses, and then here we are. We live happily ever after. These were terrible times, awful times, okay? And Luther feared this too. He kind of knew this was coming. And so if you look at the politics of that time, then what occurred after that, and you advance on to 1580, 1577, Formula of Concord, and it kind of sets things, I think, in a little more historical, vein for us to understand. How did we arrive at this place we're at today? Why are we called Lutherans? How did we derive our confession? What are we going through? And the other thing is, the question, really, you fast forward it, is, what is the confession of the Lutheran Church today? See, and how is it confessing Christ before the world? That's really the bigger question that I think we're having to face right now in our world, in our society. And in light of, and the other thing too, by the way, this there's a book out there. This Magdeburg Confession has an interesting subtitle. It talks about the role of the lesser magistrates. The role of the lesser magistrates. And I want you to think about that too, because you're asking, well, how in the heck are you bringing this up right now? Okay? You might wonder about that. Like, what do? Just get bored at night, sleeping, and you think about these things? Well, the lesser magistrates, so who was the government then? It was Chucky, Emperor Charles V, right? And he was imposing these doctrines and practices upon the Christians, right? So is that happening today? Do we have tyrannical government? I was corresponding with Beverly Yonke, who's one of the leaders of doxology, the pastoral training in the LCMS, and I was telling her what was occurring in the People's Republic of California, okay? And she was, she's not astounded, but she's saying, these are realities now, that Christians are living under tyrannical leaders, where our tyrannical leaders are prescribing our doctrine and our practice to the church, okay? Let's admit this. So I thought to myself, well, how has the church handled this in the past? And I think, I can't get any information on 1918. Nobody's helped me on that, okay? I went down that rabbit trail. I can't figure that one out, okay? I'm going to try to learn some more. If any of you have anything on 1918 Spanish flu, the church has helped me out, okay? I'm just really kind of curious, okay? Learn from history, right? But what I am going to do is read this book here on Magdeburg Confession and look at the lesser magistrates and how the church then approached that, because I think it's timely. I think it's timely for us to read this on how did our forefathers handle the mandates of a tyrannical government that mandated certain doctrines and certain practices in the church. And I think that's what this is going to come down to anyway as we live today. Don't kid yourself, the government has a religion, okay? And I'm going to preach on it this Sunday. Okay, you know what the government religion is? The religion of niceness. The religion of niceness. That's what it is, okay? And we're not nice. You know that? We're not nice. And why aren't we nice?
Because we're honest.
Brutally honest. Brutally honest, right? Yeah. Of the law and the gospel. So I'm going to find out more about this, but I hope that you can help us have a chance to read this Magdeburg Confession for the first time in English at 1550. And I thought to myself, I remember studying this a little bit in seminary, but have a recollection. But this is unfortunate that these confessions of these 9 Lutheran pastors in the town of Magdeburg are not more widespread and readily available for us to realize and to read and then make applicability to our given situation today as well. One of the things that is commented on today, and I had somebody the other day comment on this, is the lack of unity in the church. The lack of unity in the Christian church is deplorable. It's embarrassing, actually. And I had a pastor the other day, not a pastor, but a layman, saying, well, why don't you pastors get together and stand together on this stuff, One guy's here, one guy's here, and there's just really no unity. That's the way I look at it, okay? And so the lack of unity is apparent politically in our country as well. But you also have this lack of unity in the confession of the Lutheran Church. And there's a tremendous lack of unity in the LCMS. We know this. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is no stranger to this. How many of you go out and visit other churches on Sunday mornings, and you go out there and you go to other churches and you go, wow, this is like a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get, right? Forrest Gump is right? It's like a box of candies. You never know what you're going to get, right? Have you gone to an LCMS church service and totally shocked and surprised? Yeah. Some of you experience this, right? Okay. So you see this kind of lack of unity that's out there too. And so people, you have this dynamic that's occurring right now too, where, and this is interesting too. I was thinking about the baby boomers the other day, okay? Let's see, who's the baby boomer in here? What year were you born?
78.
I'm not a boomer.
No, you're more... 78. Yeah, you're on the border. But you're really Generation X.
47.
Yeah, you're the beginning of it there. So anyways, what's interesting to me, and this is fascinating, baby boomers were by and large raised in the church, weren't they? Okay? Baby boomers, World War II from about till 1970 or so. Okay, that type of thing, 75, okay. Pretty much raised in the church. Went to Sunday school, went to vacation Bible school, went to confirmation. This congregation is a prime example of that, okay? Now the question is, or the comment is, where are the baby boomers today? Well, it's pretty apparent that by and large they've left the church. They've gone. Okay, they're among the nuns. They're really not going anywhere, honestly. Okay, but and parents lament this, and I get this all the time. It's like, oh man, my kids left the church. They don't attend. They left the faith. They've forsaken the Lord. Okay, any of you say that about your kids or grandkids? Okay,
Yep.
It's a familiar story, right? And they come to me, and I tell them, what's interesting is that I said, stand by. And I said, you probably won't live to see it. But as they get older, this is going to be interesting. Do you know how many care homes are going to have to be built in assisted living because of baby boomers? Do you know there's not enough people and facilities to take care of baby boomers? You think it's bad now? You ain't seen nothing yet, okay? The forecasts, when the baby boomers age, and they're already aging, by the way, already. I know baby boomers that are in worse shape than their parents right now. Seriously, okay? They've had more joints replaced and more operations than their parents, okay? Because a lot of them abuse their bodies, okay, for a lot of different reasons. But here's the thing, I've told these parents, or these grandparents, stay tuned, because I'm seeing a return of baby boomers. I'm seeing a return. Because they're coming into grips with their own mortality and their own issues in life, and they are returning to the church ever so slowly. Okay? So stay tuned for that. And what's interesting to me is many of them have said, I'm glad to come back to the church of my confession, because the baby boomers were taught the little catechism, right? They know this, okay? And the baby boomers are kind of discerning too, because they tell me, man, I'm coming back to the church now. Some of them here at Redeemer, okay? And they're saying, I'm so glad our church hasn't changed its confession. I'm so glad our church hasn't abandoned the historic liturgy of the church. And these things, because not for nostalgia's sake. That's not good. If they come back and nostalgia, it's just like the church I grew up in. No, it's not. This is not the church you grow up in, okay? And don't have any romantic notions about that, okay? It's not the church you grew up in. It's very, very different. The world is different. But the church you learn the confession is the same, okay? And that has not altered. Okay? That type of thing. One of the things the baby boomers tell me all the time is, here's a big change. This is not the church you grew up in. Gosh, we have communion every Sunday. I said, isn't that the church you grew up in? No. But some of you did. How many of you grew up in a church with every Sunday? Why was that? That was an aberration, wasn't it? Okay, why was that? Well, I'll tell you why it was. It was the Bible and the Book of Concord. That's why. That's the simple answer, isn't it? Yeah, that's why, okay? And so you go to this. So what I'm saying is, let's stand by. God is good. We're going to sing about it in His compassion in hymn 559. And, 559 is the area code for Fresno. Did you know that? Yeah. All the 559 numbers are in Fresno. Okay. Numbers always have significance, don't they? Okay. And oh, how great is your compassion. And we're going to talk about that. So you put this together, the Magdeburg Confession of 1550. You think about Luther's, I didn't finish this, Luther's death. Okay? And you put this together with, what's occurring in our world today. And I think especially when we get to the kingdom today in Matthew 13, we're going to learn about God's kingdom and how He's at work even in our midst. So I look at the faithfulness of God, and I thank Him for His mercy, that He's faithful to us. And one of the great things about God is His compassion. So we're going to sing that as our opening devotion today. Hymn 559, Oh, how great is your compassion.